Tonight's show is brought to you by Audible. Please visit audiblepodcast.com/iMore for your free audiobook download. Good evening, everyone. It's October 3, 2012. I'm Rene Ritchie, and tonight we are picking all the nits out of the iPhone 5 and iOS 6. This is the iMore Show. She's back like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Expendables 2. She has returned. How you doing, Georgia?
I'm doing well.
Is that Seth with you, or is that Omnom from Cut the Rope? I can't tell. I can never tell them apart.
They're both exceptionally cute, but this one is Omnom.
Nice. So for people who don't know, Georgia works during the day as a high-powered therapist, and she's had the brilliant idea of doubling up on her workload on Wednesdays right before the podcast, which has resulted in her almost being fatally, mortally destroyed for the last few weeks. Is that correct? Is that a fair assessment?
That is a very fair assessment. I've been exhausted, a little bit overrun, and then I got sick, so I apologize.
But you are back this week. We're going to hold on to as long as we can.
Definitely. I'm happy to be back.
And we are talking about the iPhone 5, more specifically iPhone 5 gripes. I should point out Seth Clifford is not with us tonight. He has had a brand new bundle of joy, a baby. She's about a week old now, and I've told him that this basically means from now on, Seth is Sarah Connor, because that baby absolutely positively will not stop until Seth is dead.
Yes, sleep, survival, eat, enjoy, live. That's all he has to
survive.
Right?
Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. All right, so we are going to talk about, last week I did a one-man show. I did the iPhone 5 review from chipset to design, from top to bottom. And we got a lot of feedback. A lot of very good feedback. A lot of people liked the review, but a lot of people had little gripes, little concerns, little things they did not like. So we had the idea of giving a voice to them. And when it comes to complaining about things that they do not like, especially when it comes to Apple products, there is perhaps no greater voice in the Apple tech sphere than our own Georgia.
Yeah, thanks. Just start flaming now. Just send the emails. You don't have to hear what I'm going to say.
Email Seth at iMore. No, I'm just kidding. Let's start at the beginning, Georgia. You got your iPhone 5 on launch day.
I did. I got it on launch day. It was a wonderful experience. It was easy. They took really great care of us. We went in. They took us. This time there was no running. There was no huge, massive rush to the Apple store. They took us 20 by 20 so that no one tramples and dies. And then they went in, got the iPhone, and I have to say that I was exceptionally impressed with design and look.
Now, you had qualms, you had reservations, you had concerns prior to the launch that it would look too similar to the last year's model and that you would not like the screen.
Yes, exactly that. What my main concern is that I would have loved if it had kept the same aspect ratio and that it would be a little bit wider as well as taller. I thought that it would be annoying for me to have this very long ice cream sandwich.
The tall boy. The 40 ounce. And so what do you think now? You've been using it for over a week. Is it as bad as you thought? Is the design as boring as you thought?
I love, there's a few things I love about this design. One is that it is exceptionally light. So this is made out of aluminum, not cold hard steel.
Aluminium.
And so because of that, it's really light. It's so light and it's thinner, so light and thin, so much so that even holding it in my pocket, or even if it's in the pocket of one of my jackets, I don't know that it's actually there. I have to check because I will walk around and not know which pocket, and that is I'm actually carrying my phone.
I had the same problem. I used to know on my iPhone 4S, I could tell within 2 steps if it was in my pocket or not. This time I've gone down to the car. I've left the house without my phone in the pocket because it's so light.
Yeah, it's really fabulously light, like beautifully so. So in that, I was very, very impressed. I got the black phone. Love the look. It looks like a stealth fighter jet.
It's the Darth Vader phone.
It's beautiful. It's like all black. Everything is black. On the white phone, they have the silver edging.
Yeah, and the silver back.
But this is just, it's stunning. I love it.
So let's get right into it. Do you? One of the principal concerns people have are scuffs, scrapes, and chips, especially on the black one, because on the silver one it's harder to tell. It's like a silver car; it's harder to tell if it's dirty or not. But black on silver is a much higher contrast. Are you concerned about wear, like just everyday wear on an aluminum anodized product?
I assume that it's gonna slowly get scuffed up. Mine was not scuffed at all when I took it out of the box. It looked beautiful. And now slowly on the edges, and I'll show it on the screen, but I don't think that they'll be able to see. But there's been no chips, but there is some light scuffing along the edges. I'm going to see if it can show onto the screen. There is light scuffing onto the edges that you can see a little bit of the silver. It's not much, and I've used the phone since launch every single day as my main phone.
I
and I'm not
mine.
careful with it.
My first one had a chip out of it.
You had an actual chunk out of yours.
It was almost like a part of the anodized coating had flaked off, and I don't know if it was there in the box when I opened it, because I took it out and was about to start taking photographs of it. We did the unboxing video, and then I don't have a normal life, so my first thing is coverage, not using the phone. So we did the unboxing video, and then I started taking photographs, and I noticed it, and I took it back, and they were very good about it. They swapped it immediately, no questions asked. It just took a new thing, and it wasn't out of dead on arrival stock either. It was out of like retail floor stock. They do a marvelous job of taking care of you at the Apple Store.
They really do. They want everyone to be happy with it. I always have to say it's probably some of the best service you can ever get is buying. And that's one of the reasons why I love buying an Apple product, is that they really take care of you. It's a premium product and they take premium care of you. I've never had bad service ever at an Apple store. I would be shocked. It's probably exceptionally rare. So
what do you think about people who are concerned? I mean, if you've ever had a stainless steel iPod, if you've ever had one of the aluminum iPods, aluminum does scuff. And that's what Phil Schiller, when he was asked about it in a reported email, said that that's how aluminum wears. And if you look at the original iPhone, there's some people who still have it, and it looks almost like a what's that word? Cyberpunk? No, not cyberpunk. Steampunk. It looks more like a steampunk device.
I don't think that that's really a fair statement. It is not easy. And someone had said just put some Sharpie onto your iPhone. It's not easy to stick paint on aluminum. They go through a special process of having to. I want to say oxidize, but it's
Anodize.
Not. Yeah, in order to get it, they only went through one layer, and they're supposed to go through probably two to have it be really, really well stuck on. It would have probably made it phone more heavy and a little bit thicker in order to deal with that. And that's why Apple chose not to go that route. So I don't really buy that that's the way that they want the phone to look. Apple does not make a product and want you to alter it in any way, shape, or form.
But is that part of owning an aluminum product? It's gonna, anything that
does not have to. No, if they had gone through two levels of, go ahead, say it, Rene, because I'll say it wrong.
Anodization.
Yeah, then it's
it would have taken twice as long to wear through.
Yes, exactly, and then it would last for quite a long amount of time. So because of that, this will scuff earlier.
Will you put it in a case, or will you live with it, or will you even take the initiative and polish it up yourself?
I will not polish it up. I will leave it with the scuffs, and I'm going to be testing out a whole bunch of different cases, and I'll try out some cases, but I love the look of the phone, and holding it up, it's stunning. I have to say, for looks, it gets A+. I still do wish that the phone was keeping the same aspect ratio, because surfing the net, which I usually surf in landscape view, no. Portrait. I should escape. I do it in portrait view, so it's still really, really small. That's the only thing that I have to say is an annoyance for me.
You get more of the page, but the page itself is not bigger.
No, not in that view.
Now, yeah. So
are you going to wear a case? Use a case on your phone?
That's what I was about to ask you. I almost never wear cases except like you, because I review them. I will put a case on just to review it. But I normally don't. I really like Apple industrial design. I famously did not like the photos of the iPhone 4 when Gizmodo leaked them, but when I saw the actual product, I liked it. So the same thing, when I saw renders of the two-tone, it didn't look good to me, but the way Apple has produced the final product, it looks good to me. And I saw that TV commercial, and I have to admit, I winced when Apple said it's both bigger and smaller. How can there be more of it and less of it? I thought this is the worst commercial ever. But in using it, that is exactly right, because the phone is actually smaller. It's 12% smaller by volume, but it feels and it looks like a bigger phone. And the closest thing I can come, George, is those optical illusions that I used to look at when I was a kid, where it's physically the same size, but because of the way that it's put together, it just looks bigger. And because more of the front is screen and the screen is slightly longer, it just plays with your perceptions enough. And most of the loss in volume comes from thinness, which you don't really see when you're holding it in front of you.
Which is true, but I have to agree with Viper from the chat room. The commercials themselves, lame. What is up with the Apple commercials
the photography
with the hand
one was cool.
and the it reaches here and here.
No, the panorama photo, you've got to not have a heart not to like the panorama photo.
I like the panorama photo, but I don't like the one where they show the hand. Wait, I'm going to try to do it. It's hard to do it with the thing in. And it's showing where it can reach. That one, horrifically.
Yeah, I didn't like that one.
I'm watching it and I'm actually in physical pain. I'm like, what happened, Apple? What happened?
What do you think of people who are complaining that Apple made the screen? Because we heard a lot of people who maybe like Samsung devices or like HTC devices or Nokia devices and all want a bigger screen. But I was surprised that we got a ton of feedback from people who were upset they made it bigger, who liked the 3.5 screen because they could reach every corner, because it was very easy to use one-handed while they were walking around.
I had wanted again, to keep the same aspect ratio, so we do a much bigger screen. And though, that being said, I do find it annoying that now I cannot do the one-hand type with my thumb all the way across. I have small hands anyways, like a small miniature person, and I can't reach everywhere. So I understand that feeling of I now have to actually do this, which is ridiculous, but this is an annoyance to me, is I actually every once in a while have to tap with my finger to reach the opposite corner. Because even like someone that has a big hand, you can reach the, angular opposite, but it's really quite a stretch to reach all the way on the other side. So don't like that.
Yeah, we heard a lot of feedback about that, especially from designers who are wondering if they're going to start making buttons closer to the bottom the way Android does. Android has a lot of buttons at the bottom. It's interesting. I do like the screen. I was like you. I was hoping that Apple would do a 4-inch screen that kept the 2:3 aspect ratio, that sacrificed some of the Retina resolution for size, because that way text would be bigger. Apps wouldn't have to be adapted to be the same pixels. It would just be bigger pixels. But I've actually ended up, I can't say I like it better than that alternative, but I don't dislike it as much as I thought. And I think that's because unlike the iPad, the iPhone only has one column. So you're just getting a longer column. And because, especially with the black iPhone, you see that bright screen. Georgia, I put this phone down on a table in a poorly lit room and I cannot find it anymore. That's how black this phone is. I did
the exact same thing. I left it on a black tablecloth and I went back and I had a slight moment of panic saying, oh my God, where is my phone? Luckily, it was so stealth because no one stole the phone either.
Yeah, it's like camouflage. It's like one of those evil superhero characters who blends into the shadows. But because of that, all I see is a screen. And I don't, especially for videos, like if you I was recording a bunch of videos and then I was watching YouTube and it really fills up the phone with video content and with video games and stuff like that. It's much better than I thought it would be.
Rene, what do you think of LTE?
Okay, so purely LTE is fantastic. LTE is so good that I forget I'm not on Wi-Fi and I have to force myself. Usually I take it off Wi-Fi mode because sometimes I walk around and I get caught on Wi-Fi signals for open Wi-Fi points. So I usually leave it off, but then I come home and it's so fast, I forget it's on LTE. Because 3G was so slow, I'd immediately switch to Wi-Fi. This just keeps trucking along. But the two problems I've had with LTE is, one, I'm getting much faster speeds on my iPad than I am on my iPhone. And if I tether to my iPhone, I'm getting much faster speeds. I'm getting about 13 to 15 on Rogers on my iPad. But when I tether to my laptop on my iPhone, I'm getting 30. So I don't know. I've asked Rogers a couple times now. They have not answered me. So I don't know what's going on there. But in general, yeah, LTE is like the best thing ever.
It's dangerous for me, though, because I'm often turning off Wi-Fi because of the annoying signal. I have to get it set up at work. So I'm turning it off. But then suddenly I'm watching YouTube videos.
Yes.
And they stream so quickly.
And they're high def now.
And they're high def that I am going through, megs like nothing else. And it's like fabulous, but really scary because I'm going to go through my data real quick. Really quick. And I don't even know it because sometimes I'm like, oh, at home, actually I better check. At home, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. And I don't notice the difference between going on Wi-Fi or not. There we go. I am on a Wi-Fi fab.
And one of the other interesting things is Verizon issued a carrier update file because they were accidentally having people go on to cellular while they were on Wi-Fi. So you thought you were on Wi-Fi, you could do whatever you wanted, and you were building up cellular data charges. Now now it's hard to tell. Some people are saying this is also happening on AT&T and Rogers and Bell and O2 in the UK, and it's hard to tell if that's just because they've seen it happen on Verizon, so it's Me Too, or it's what's the thing in medicine where you have a psychosomatic, it's a psychosomatic LTE usage. But Verizon has admitted to this, put out an update. No one else has. Bell and AT&T and Rogers have all said it's not happening. But it is a concern for a lot of people because you're using so much data. Suddenly you're panicking about your caps.
Yes. 6 gigs may not be close to enough.
And and that's interesting because for a lot of people, LTE is faster even than their home connection.
It is exceptionally fast. The first time that I turned on the phone, and we did some of the speed tests, Rene, but the first time I turned on the phone and surfed the web, I was actually it was a little bit shocking because I'm used to the pace of my 4S.
Yes.
And it is much faster, exceptionally faster. If you're going from the 4, it's almost double, like it's double the speed. It's amazing. And you'll never be able to go back.
What's interesting is it's not just the LTE. I mean, the LTE is what gets the data to your phone faster, and it is frickin' fast. But also,
the chip.
Yeah, Apple made their own processor. For the first time ever, Apple did not take the Cortex A9, which was in the last phone. They did not use the A15, which is the next generation ARM processor. They made their own. They custom built it. And Georgia, they hand set the cores, which almost is never done anymore because it's incredibly expensive, but it allows for much better power management. So Apple was incredibly serious about this, and everything from HTML parsing to JavaScript, everything about rendering a web page is so fast on this phone that you really forget that it's a phone now. It's not the mobile internet anymore. It's just like a fire hose in your hand.
It is a fabulous experience. Even playing games that I found had a really long load time that I found slightly annoying, such as Field Runners, it just loads up really, really quickly. And I love that. It's so much more fun. You get to do much more in the amount of time that I used to have to deal with.
What's funny now is it's so fast you actually have to wait for Game Center to log in, which used to be it used to be loading so slowly that Game Center, you didn't even notice it, but now it's like, oh, it's loading, Game Center, and then it goes again. And they're not using the dual-core graphics processor of the iPhone 4S or the quad-core one of the iPad 3. They're actually using a triple-core Power VR SGX chip, and combined all together with a gig of RAM, it is... If you're not buying one, do not experiment with it because it will make you sad. It is so fast.
So, Rene, there's also the Shake.
Yes.
Go ahead. Can you explain, because you were talking before about the reasoning for the Shake. So if you take your iPhone and give it, I don't think it'll...
So this isn't new. This isn't not new to the iPhone 5. This happened, I believe, with the 3 and with the 3G and the 3GS. The power button on some units, like mine, is not. The power button on the 4 and the 4S was very solid. It did not move around inside its housing. But the power button on the iPhone 5 does on some people's units. So if you put it next to your ear and shake, you can hear the power button moving around inside the casing. And it bothers some people. Like, it bothers one of our forum moderators, Jeremy, a lot. Other people really could care less. But yeah, it's one of those little fit and finish things that has concerned some people.
I never shake my phone that hard in the first place. I guess if you're going dancing and you are you have really good hearing.
Well, I think if you're dancing, you wouldn't notice it. But if you put it next to your head and shake it a lot, which I don't know why you do, quite frankly. But that brings up another point. Georgia, it's iOS 6 now, and there's still no option to stop the phone from buzzing and beeping when I'm on a call. I'm sitting there, I'm minding my own business, zing, 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 and suddenly SMS comes in or dun, 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 Game Center. I would just like a little sliding option. Right now it says mute sounds, mute vibration. I would just like one that says mute with proximity sensor so that I have the choice when the phone is up and the screen turns off for notifications to turn off too.
I think that's a great idea. I do not I always keep my phone completely on silent. What I've noticed is that sometimes now I have to be very careful for my alarms as well.
Yeah.
I have to now go back through it. again, I was jailbroken, so I had a little bit of an issue with transferring everything over. But I love the fact, the Do Not Disturb, love the fact that they give you the option of what data goes to what, if you're going to allow any type of system feed backwards to any application. But I still have to go through everything and mute all of the sounds to everything that happens to be on my phone, turn it on what I need. I don't know.
You were saying before that the thing you miss the most from your jailbroken iPhone 4S is Byte SMS.
Oh, it's horrible. It's really hard to live without Byte SMS. So what Byte SMS does, if you do not already know, is it allows you to answer a text and stay, like you answer the text without any applications switching or turning off. And then you stay in the application, turns it off, and you can go back to your game.
It's an actionable notification. So in the notification, there's a little window that allows you to respond to it.
Yes, you can type and send.
Yeah, without ever. So you're playing your game, you're notified there's an iMessage, you just type quickly into it, it flips back around, and you keep playing. You never carousel out of it.
Right. So now sometimes when I will get a message and I want to reply out, it does the quick app switching.
Yeah.
In between, I'm then and I have to go back into the application that I was before. Cannot stand that. I am hurting for my Byte SMS.
Now, what makes it a poor experience is that the fast app switching isn't bad. There's something better we'll talk about in a second, but the fast app switching isn't bad. It's that there's no fast switch back. There should be a gesture that you can do that'll instantly send you back to the last application, almost like a back button, whether it's a 2-finger swipe or something that you can quickly go to one app, do something, and immediately go back to the app you were in previously.
Well, I'm just gonna say, Rene, why can't they just give us the same experience that Byte SMS can give in the first place? Why should I even have to do that?
They have not introduced actionable notifications yet. I'm hoping that'll be will be one of the big features in the next version of iOS, because if an alarm goes off, when the alarm comes up, right now I can just dismiss it or snooze it. There should be a control that lets me say, no, do it in 10 minutes, reset the alarm for this time. There should be actions that I can perform on notifications. Android got that a few months ago with Android 4.1. WebOS had some version of it. For example, music controls, if you get a notification about music. So that to me is the next generation feature. I don't care about widgets on the home screen because iOS is not about staying on the home screen. It's about being in apps. But when I'm in apps, give me the ability to do stuff without leaving those apps.
Yes, it's hard. It's a hardship. It's a hardship, especially since I get so many text messages a day. And I hate it. I hate changing it. It causes me a certain amount of frustration. So sometimes I will not go and reply right away. And then I forget about dealing with that. If I haven't texted you back, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, too, is that you do get, like, if the text message comes in, and you don't do anything, it'll buzz you again. But if you dismiss it or you're active and you ignore it, you actually have to go to the application and go look for it again. There's Notification Center will stack them if you have it set up, but you still have to pull down Notification Center and start going through the messages. And if you actually dismiss those messages and they're gone from there, then it's like the hunt for Red October.
And that would be the one reason why when I would jailbreak again. That's the biggest thing in between jailbreaking and not,
So we're just going to pause for a second so I can thank our awesome sponsor this evening. It is Audible, purveyors of fine audio books. If you visit audiblepodcast.com/iMore, you can get a free audiobook download. And, I use Audible for pretty much all my long form reading these days. If I want to read a website or a comic book, I pick up my iPad and I go to town. But if I want to do a long read, if I want to read a novel, whether it is fiction or whether it is nonfiction, I go straight to Audible. The time was I had a long commute. I would travel for an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes in each direction. And Audible is what let me get through that with whatever is left of my sanity intact. But these days I read and write so much web content. I write long form articles on iMore day in, day out, and my eyes just simply need a break. And it's wonderful to be able to just sit back, relax, put a set of headphones on and listen to a fantastic book, whether it's the author who is reading it or whether it's a professional voice actor or even a professional actor doing it. It is It is one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had. Some of the books are actually done like plays. For example, they're working on the Hobbit movie now, and if you listen to The Hobbit or you listen to Lord of the Rings on Audible, it is almost like a theatrical presentation. If you listen to Dune, it is almost like a theatrical presentation. It is in some ways, and I know this is heresy for a lot of people, but it is in some ways far better than the written word. Time was, stories were passed down orally from one person to the next. They were told. And Audible is a throwback. It is a throwback to before there were stone tablets, before there were papyrus, before there was pulp and paper, before there was a printing press. And I really love that. There is some sort of deep connection that you make when you hear someone telling you a story, even if it's Neil Gaiman in his own words. It is just beyond what you can get from print on paper. So if you have not already, go to audiblepodcast.com/iMore, check out your free audiobook download, and you will love them absolutely as much as I do. Thanks, Audible. So you did a whole post on battery life for the iPhone 5, and it got picked up I mean, I opened up Huffington Post, and they were talking about your battery saving tip post. Um, it seems like every time a new device comes out or a new OS comes out, a certain percentage of the user base has horrible battery life. I had excellent battery life. When I first got my iPhone 5, I could leave it overnight. It would barely drain. It would last me more than a day, better than my iPhone 4S. I'm running a bunch of beta software now, and that's hurting my battery life. If I remove it, I'm fine again. So I have not had any problems. How's your battery life been?
I would say that it does drain faster than on my 4S. I use my phone quite a lot, and I usually just keep it maxed out. But I'm not really sure if that's because I don't have chargers absolutely everywhere, which I usually do for my old phone because I only have a couple of them. But I do have to charge I have to charge at the end of the day, and I would say that now I have to charge 3/4 of the day. My phone will die out.
Now, there's a couple of things to consider. One is that when you get a new phone, you tend to use it more. I mean, some people will just, new phone, new operating system, they'll just start using all the new features. And a lot of times the new features involve notifications or location or other things that are hard on the battery. So I would suggest checking your usage. But the other thing you pointed out, well, a couple of things you pointed out. One is if you restore from a backup, quite sometimes you do get corrupted files. So you can try doing a clean install.
Yeah, sorry, did I lose you, Rene?
No, you're still there.
Yeah, there's definitely a few things that you can do. I find I had to use a lot of the tips that I dealt with. Taking off any services that you may not need to use, turning off location services, turning off notification center, killing power-hungry apps. My favorite one is just turning down the brightness of the screen.
Yeah.
It's completely non-necessary. Also turning off Wi-Fi so that it's not constantly searching. It's going to be using up your memory.
Oh, and a big one with this one is LTE, because LTE is not widespread yet. And if you're in an area that touches on LTE, your radio will try to lock onto that. And if you're going in and out of reception, or you're not really in a good reception area, your radio is going to scream, your phone's going to get hot, and you will watch your battery go down. And I think there's still a problem with AT&T. I said every time I go to AT&T, my phone just starts draining in front of me. And Kevin took his iPhone 5 to the US last week, and he called me and he goes, "What's with this crappy battery life on the iPhone 5?" And I said, "Was it the same on Roger?" He said, "No." I said, "Oh, you on AT&T now?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "There's your crappy battery life on the iPhone 5.
So yeah, the other thing is just, having to get a whole bunch of chargers, and I always now carry my charger around with me because I'm going to need it. And the reason that my phone drains any faster is actually the phone. I believe that it does. Rene, the battery life on the iPhone 5 in comparison, running similar, iOS 6 clean install?
It's bigger. So it's slightly bigger. I think it's 10 or 20 mAh's bigger than the iPhone 4S. But when I ask people about it, it's exactly the power-hungry apps you talked about. For example, there's turn-by-turn navigation free on the iPhone 5 now, and that's a huge battery drain. And that was a huge battery drain when you use Navigon on the other ones. Not a lot of people wanted to pay $50 for Navigon. So a lot of people are using turn-by-turn navigation for the first time, and that hits the battery hard. And exactly like what you said, most of your car adapters, car chargers, Apple has not made the adapters available, the 30-pin to lightning pin adapters in many areas. So you just don't have a way to plug your car in and use it.
Right. Though I use the Qualcomm, the dual USB one, so I don't have to worry about that in my car. Though,
but you had to buy a cable to use it.
Yes, I have 3 of them. So at work, carry around with me, and then at home, just so that I don't have to worry about my phone dying, because it's a real issue if my phone suddenly dies and I need it, and so there's no way to get help if I get lost, which I always do. I find that the maps do cause my phone to get quite hot.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that, Rene?
Yeah. So anytime, so radios are going to be the source of a lot of drain on your phones. Anytime a radio is running, and especially if a radio is searching, and GPS is a non-trivial thing for a phone to do because it's got to triangulate location. So if that's running, and that was the same thing with iOS 5 apps with every generation of iPhone maps, the iOS 6 maps, and we'll get to those in a second because I know Georgia has a thing or two to say about them. But iOS 6 maps there was actually this really dumb story. And I'm going to pause for a minute and address the dumbness of this story. There was a story published that said that only 1 in 25 people were using iOS 6 maps, that people hated it so much, almost everybody stopped using it. And this was based on a proxy company measuring the amount of data that people were using for maps on their phone. But iOS 6 maps famously uses vector data for their maps as opposed to bitmaps. And anyone who's ever used Photoshop versus Illustrator or has ever used vector for anything knows that vector files are tiny. They require very little data. And so when you are actually using the maps on iOS 6, you are pulling down a much smaller set of data. So the GPS will still pull the same amount of power, but actually the data transfer from the maps will be much lower.
Cool.
So yes, Georgia, you brought up the topic of maps. Go for it.
Okay, here we go. I need maps. And a lot of people are saying that this is the same thing to Antenna Gate, and it doesn't really matter. I shouldn't be as upset about the mapping abilities of...
Well, no, for Antenna Gate, you could put on a bumper and it was fixed. There's no bumper for maps.
There is no fix for my maps. I could, I guess, go on to Google Maps and use it as a web-based program. I don't like doing that. It bothers me. I want the maps on there. So what's
your experience been like with the maps? Because some people are having an excellent time and some people, they are utterly unusable. How's your experience been?
I get lost anywhere. It is not my skill. My visual spatial skills of finding a location are horrible. So because of that, I need the maps. It's not something that I can live without. And it's probably one of the applications besides using the phone or surfing the web that I use the most on my phone. So it's an essential for me. Loved my Google Maps. They were simple. They were very, very accurate. They weren't anything fancy, but it was perfect. It worked. They
weren't perfect. I would give them a 9 out of 10. I think they did almost all the time. They would get me the right thing. But once in a while, I had really bizarre results.
I have never had bizarre results from my Google Maps. And they were even impressive in that they knew when there was construction happening exceptionally fast. So they would even find like ways around detours. And so I have to say I would give them like 9.8 on 10. So, and if it was wrong by maybe a house or 2.
I would sometimes have like a freeway in between me and the road, but things that are non-obvious. They did an exceptional job at taking tons of data, sifting through it, making it coherent, and closely identify. What they're doing that Apple's not doing for me is like Apple might show me a location in Shanghai with the right name, but I want that in Pierrefonds, thank you very much, or Montreal.
Yeah, you want them to be able to use where your location currently is in order to find the closest proximity to what you are searching for first.
And there also seems to be a difference. Like Google would give you everything, too much sometimes, but amongst what they would give you would almost always be what you wanted. Where Apple, if they're not sure, they're not doing the fuzziness. Like they're not giving me useless results, but sometimes they're not giving me any useful results at the same time. Like I need a happy middle ground there.
My problem with my main issue is that when it gives me a location, it says approximate location, I start to panic. Why? Because I'm right now located in the middle of a park. That's not where
You're
I actually
podcasting from a
live.
park?
I'm podcasting from the middle of the park right now. It's not where I live. They're quite far off. So because of that, every time I see a location, I was looking for a Staples store, and I typed it in, and the store was not. I knew that I was 2 blocks one way or the other, and I just wanted to make sure that I walked the right way to get back to where I wanted to go. And that's the reason why I typed it in. So I knew it was only 2 blocks away. It chose one that was 3 miles away. So then it is not even able to find locations that are huge brand name stores. I lose all trust in it. That's something that I need to have trust in, is a proper mapping system.
Well, I find you need to almost exactly match the way they have the name of the business stored in the database, where Google is much more forgiving of what you typed in.
Yes. Yeah. But it wasn't, that was not the reason why I didn't find it, because it did find a Staples store, just not the one that
it doesn't filter by location.
It didn't find it at all. It was not there.
Now, up until a year ago, I was across the street on Google Maps, and then they fixed that finally after 3 years of me submitting corrections. They fixed it. Now
the street is one thing.
Well, no, now I'm 2 houses down on the Apple Maps.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah. But in fairness, again, earlier this year, you and I drove to a photography store using Google Maps that had closed a year earlier. So I mean, it's
fair.
It's an ongoing.
That's fair. But that's, again, the store had closed. And if you had called it...
We accurately got to the store that closed.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. In Apple, we wouldn't have even accurately gotten to the store that closed. And because of that, we would not have known that it was closed.
My other problem is that Flyover Mode is only a mapping solution if you're Superman. If you need to avoid hitting the Sears Tower while you're flying, Flyover Mode is great. But for me, Street View was a much more practical solution.
It's like a cool parlor trick, but in the end, you have to make sure that you spend the time in making sure that your maps are accurate and that it will find the proper location to get there. It does not do a great job of figuring out when there's traffic, when there's construction, roads that are closed, roads that are open. It will still send me to whichever direction it deems better.
Now,
that stresses me out.
And we're lucky because we're in the city that the company that Apple bought to do this was located. So even the suburbs are gorgeously 3D modeled and rendered. I mean, it looks almost like I live pretty far away from the city, and my area looks like a model train set. But it's a tech demo to me. It's a game. Like I spent an hour flying around London, but it's not maps to me.
No, for sure. It's cool, but that's about it.
So
I'm taking a look because we did. You wrote down, if they're giving you the wrong location, Rene, you did a how-to on how to figure out if
how to report the problem.
There, how to report the problem to Apple. So the report was done 2 weeks ago, and I'm still in a park.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how they're prioritizing, because some corrections are being done within 24 hours, and some are just languishing. So it might be We spoke to Sam Vermette last night, who does the Transit app, and we'll talk about Transit apps in a second. And one of the questions we asked him is, like, how hard is it to do this? And he's only doing a very small scale. And he said it's incredibly difficult to get the data from companies, to load it all in. It comes in a variety of formats. Like, for example, telephone numbers are all formatted differently. Addresses are all formatted differently. So you've got to cleanse it. You've got to deduplicate it. And for him, it can take a long time. And like, again, he's only doing a very small thing. So Apple is doing this on a global scale, and it seems to be like a fractal error. They just did not understand how difficult this was. And while in large scale the maps work, like I can find Canada, the smaller I drill down, the more and more errors crop up. So again, it just doesn't scale at this point. And I mean, Google worked for 7 to 10 years on getting to where they are today.
Probably about 15 years for their maps, though. When they started sending out people wanting the data of going out, they used to pay you. You could send in pictures and details, and they would give you, like, I don't know, it was 10 cents per information that you would give to Google. They spent a lot of time.
And they had thousands of people working on it.
They do, which is what infuriates me at Apple. Apple had 6 months left on Google's contract. What they could have done, and I think would have been a brilliant idea, was release their application on the phone, have it in beta for 6 months until Google's contract ran out, And during that period of time, they could have had people sending information to make the maps more accurate.
Would it have scared you to have a Maps app with the word beta on it?
It's much less. I would know that it's a
You'd
beta.
be warned at least.
Exactly. And I wouldn't use it. I would use Google for when I had to get somewhere and it was important. So I wouldn't be angry. And then I would have used the other app to help out Apple. I don't mind helping out. It's free labor. Help out Apple in order to get their map system away.
Now, there's a report today that Apple is using Apple retail staff to go out and correct the maps because that is their largest set of employees.
And they're also recruiting some Google Map staffers as well.
Yes.
So
into the Geo team.
To help out. The thing is, I don't think that they understand, like, do you think that they, like, how could they make such a huge mess up? Okay, Siri, fine.
Well, here's my question.
Siri didn't really work out, but how could they make such a miss on this?
Here's my question. Tim Cook wrote this letter. He apologized. He recommended other apps. They put a section up. But Tim Cook apologizing, fine. That's an excellent way to handle a public relations problem. But how did it get to the point where Tim Cook had to write that letter? That to me is a serious problem because it shows a disconnect. And you can say Siri is a similar thing, but it shows a disconnect between Apple quality assurance and released product. He should never have had to write that letter.
Of course not. It's ridiculous. They must have known before the app was released that it was not ready.
Well, and if they didn't, that's an equally large problem.
Then there's a huge issue with the way that Apple's being run right now. And the fact that he has to write a letter, and then, of course, on the website, they had to change the way that they spoke of the maps. Of, it is no longer a amazing,
the most powerful maps
magical,
ever. It's now beautifully vector drawn.
They had to take that off. That's a lot of really embarrassing publicity. I think Google right now is sitting pretty and chuckling to themselves.
Well, Google, has a huge opportunity now. If they really, whether or not, like, there was a story that it took 2 Apple engineers 3 weeks to make the original Google-powered Maps app for the iPhone. So you've got to think that Google now could theoretically release a Maps app anytime they wanted. And
why would Google do that?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they would. I'm saying theoretically they could. Theoretically, it wouldn't be a hard task for them to get a Maps app. And I don't think Apple would not approve it at this stage just because of the sheer publicity on it. But you've got to think there's a huge opportunity for Google to come in, quote unquote, rescue everyone from Apple Maps and start getting all that data that Apple was so eager to deny them previously.
Though that would be a horrible decision on Google's part. This is great for Google. Google tried to stick it to Apple there, and then they brought out that press release, true or not, that, we didn't even know that they were doing this. And then for everyone that's panicking about Apple's maps that are horrible and hoping that hopefully Google will have an app released soon, which will lower our levels of stress. They're like, we're not even making an app for the
Apple has maps on their phone?
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
So
I think that Apple, in their way of trying to get out of Google's paws,
the price became very high.
It's horrible. It's horrible because the experience for me, really, really sad.
So let's extrapolate because we have a couple of things I want to cover. A year from now, if Apple's maps are near flawless, is this just a small hiccup and no one remembers this, or is this a significant blow no matter what happens in the end?
What happens to people is that if the first time you make a mistake, we can chalk it up, and again, it depends on how many mistakes and how quickly they are. So at a certain stage, people found that Apple was infallible, that they would make good products and products that we could trust.
That was before Mobile Me.
Well, you see, there's a difference. Mobile Me is a social application you do not need to use.
Some people do need their email. You can't argue that for some people, email is hugely important, and calendaring and that kind of stuff.
Yes, but there's very few people that were forced to only use that. Now, on my phone, I take it around with me, and a lot of people don't download things unless they're necessary. So it's a big difference. So they ended up with AntennaGate not releasing the white iPhone, Siri, a big deal, and then the maps. And after a while, we lose our trust in the product. And the worst part is that we lose trust that what they say is what they mean. And that's what Apple had premium of, is that if they said this product worked seamlessly, it did. And I
Or
think
at least we bought into the fact that it did. Whether it did or not, we gave them the benefit of the doubt.
I think that most of Apple's products did. They worked exceptionally well. Maybe not all of the products that they released, but their main ones definitely did. The first time I used an iPhone, it was a beautiful experience. When I used any of the applications that Apple made, amazing. iTunes, fabulous, and only got
Oh, you
better.
can't say iTunes is fabulous.
Well, when I got into the game for iTunes, it was really, really good. They revolutionized the way that we buy music.
Okay, yeah, the concept of the actual iTunes app is a horrid, bloated beast at this point. But I'll give you the concept of iTunes.
I'm not even going to go into the way I feel about the iTunes
app.
Oh,
they're also pointing out Ping in the chat room for you.
Yes. But again, it's not a necessity. Yeah. Maps, it's a big deal. Siri also, it's a huge can of fail.
It is getting better. Siri under iOS 6 is much better than it was on iOS 5.
But again, now they've lost my trust.
But they're gaining new... So, yes, that's true. But the person who buys the phone today and tries Siri does not have that baggage behind them. So they have an opportunity with every new user, as long as the product is better.
Say, Siri, how do I get to this store? And it's not going to bring you to the
Well, now Maps becomes the issue, which is why I'm wondering, like, if it takes them a year out and Maps is fixed, is it still a problem?
Yeah, it's a huge problem because next application that they come out with, and I assumed, and I think that I assumed that Maps would work. I assumed that, again, they already have the data. It's not as if that they don't, though. I mean, they
did not have anywhere near enough data.
Exactly. I assumed that they would. Yeah. They have enough money to buy as much of the data that they need.
So so the problem with the data is that let's just assume that Apple bought all the data. All the data is Apple's. Their problem seems to be that they are not able to aggregate, normalize, deduplicate, sanitize, and everything else you need to do to that data to present it in a coherent method for the user. And that is a really, really big, really not easy job. And I think they overestimated their ability to do it.
I think that what happened is that Apple trusted people to cover this that could not do it. So there is something that's happening. There are people that have made fabulous mapping applications, and some of them are the ones that Tim Cook mentioned. To be able to hire people that will be competent in doing something in the amount of time and can say, you know what, this cannot be done in
mapping
this amount
experts,
of time.
Right?
Pardon me?
Mapping experts.
Well, not just mapping, but also putting it into an application that will be usable and easy enough to use. So that's what they needed. That's the mistake that they made because they had 6 months that they could have then fixed out these bugs. This did not have to happen.
My last quick question to you about this is, let's say Google does release their maps, and part of the reason Apple and Google were at an impasse is because Google wanted to integrate Latitude, which is sort of like Find My Friends. So it's person tracking software. Google wanted to harvest location data to a degree that made Apple uncomfortable. Would you have any qualms about using a pure Google mapping solution? Because I know you're an incredibly privacy-based person. Would that be a deal breaker for you?
I hate the idea. I truly, truly hate the idea of Google having my information. To be honest, would Google even care about where I go? No, but the thought that they're using that information and it's kind of forced upon me bothers me to a great deal. In the end, I think anonymity is going to be the thing that will be the highest.
It'll be priceless.
Exactly. So I don't like that idea. Unfortunately, I don't have much of a choice because I get lost anywhere. So I would have used that so that I can make sure that I would get to my place on time. Out of both of them, I have to make sure that I get to where I need to go safely and quickly.
You could just pick up your phone and say, Sergey, Larry, I'm lost. I know you're listening. Can you please drop the Google Jet here? Just drop those Google glasses, paratroopers, and rescue me, please.
I'm all in for the Google car. Drive me there on your own.
I have this idea of
lived in Cali.
Persons of interest. I just have the idea you're looking at, like you talk to your phone the way he talks to the machine because he just knows that it's listening.
That's what I would love for Siri to be.
Yeah, so I mean that was another indicator. We got some Siri improvements. We got sports, we got movies, we got restaurants. We didn't get anything like Google Now, which pre-caches stuff. It's almost like what Roger McNamee said that the Palm Pre was going to do, which is it knows where you are, it knows what time your appointments are, it knows who your contacts are. So it can say, Georgia,
a little bit of a virtual assistant.
Yeah, Georgia, you're late for the podcast. There's no way you're going to make it from work to the podcast in time. Would you like me to send an email to Rene saying, oh God, I'm going to be 5 minutes late? Yes, and here's, by the way, the fastest way to get there.
Yes, here's how to get there. Would you like me to send an email, please, telling Rene that you cannot reach there? Yes, I want a personal assistant. That's exactly what I wanted Siri to become. Um, and I'm again, waiting. I don't even use, it's interesting. I have not yet, I've used Siri, I think 3 times, all to make reminders, though reminders are easier to make now. But that's all I use Siri for.
Well, we had a contest. You and I tried to see if you could type stuff faster than I could use Siri. And in some things, Siri is still faster than you.
Definitely. And I type with one finger, so it's massively slow. And I usually beat you to the goal line every single time in comparison to Siri.
Well, for certain tasks. I mean, Siri is really fast at making reminders. It's really fast at doing very simple searches.
Right. And yeah, if you're gonna deal with certain things, Siri can work. But it's that one time that Siri messes up and you have to go back through it. Yeah.
We were tested. We have a Scottish friend named Ord, and he really loved that commercial where Siri didn't work for people in Scotland, where he said like, Siri, find me a jammy Dodger. So he tried it. As soon as the iPhone 5 came out, the iOS 6 came out, he tried it. And Siri said, oh, sorry, I gave the last one to Doctor Who. And then he said, so how about a chip bati? And they said, sorry, we don't have any naked bodies. So it was 1 for 2. It wasn't perfect, but it is 50% more Scottish friendly now.
Right. Right. Do you use Siri, Rene, a lot?
I use Siri a lot because mostly when I can't, like, I am so lazy. I don't want to type anymore, Georgia. I type all day, every day. I typed over 20,000 words for the iOS 6 and iPhone 5 review. So like for just a text message or just a small bit of text, I almost always use Siri. I was happy it came to the Mac. I was happy it came to the iPad. And even now, if I'm driving, I've dictated several posts on iMore using Siri. And it's not perfect, but it's enough that I don't forget the idea, that I don't lose the flow, and that I can quickly edit it and post it when I get out of the car.
Is what you're saying is if there's typos in your posts, blame Siri?
Yes, even if I didn't use Siri, absolutely blame Siri.
That's what it should be. Typed from my Siri.
Now, you talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to focus on it more. What do you think of gaming on the iPhone 5 so far?
I enjoy gaming on it. The screen is larger, so I enjoy that aspect. The speed, phenomenal. So far, my experience has been very good. I hated the load times. It's one of the biggest annoyances was the load time in between games. And now I don't have to worry about that as much. So I enjoy gaming on my iPhone. And I use it quite a good deal of time. Someone asked in this chat room, and I'll just mention it, if the speakers are louder. And some people, I released a sound quality thing, and some people are like, oh yeah, these speakers are so much better on certain octaves. I'll be honest, I can't tell.
They did register louder in your test, though. They were
a minute amount that unless you are a schnauzer, you're probably not going to notice the difference.
No, I think they're no. I mean, I think that they're no. It's not much, but I think it's definitely a noticeable difference.
I don't find so. I don't find it's a noticeable difference in between it. I still have to do the hand cupping thing to listen to certain things.
Yeah, mine's not that bad. Mine is not, I mean, it's not super loud, but it's definitely a little bit of an improvement. What do you think about the photography? Because you take a lot of photos. Leanna did a ton of tests. Her basics were, she didn't find low light was that better, but I found low light was hugely improved, and so did a bunch of other people. It's funny, though, because Consumer Reports didn't either, so I wonder if there's some variation in iPhones that we need to look into. But the HDR is I just leave the HDR on for anything that I take outside now.
Yeah, here's a low light condition, and I do not notice that it's any better under low lighting, unfortunately.
See, mine are fantastically better. Like they're noisy as hell, but I can actually discern objects, and I did side by side. I walked around with a 4S and a 5, and the 4S are dark and I can't see them, and the 5 I can tell what they are.
And I don't know if it's the difference between I don't know if it's the sensors or anything else. That might be a difference between the phone. Maybe my sapphire screen is, I don't know.
You had a faulty sapphire. No, Leanna didn't see a difference either, but and neither did Consumer Reports, but I saw a huge difference, and so did some other people. So we're going to have to test that some more.
We're going to have to take a look through that. Rene, did you notice any bleeding?
No, I did not notice any. So some people have complained that there's a purple cast on when you're near light. That's just because the phone's gotten better. I mean, a bunch of really good photographers has taken a bunch of tests, and with the iPhone camera compared to other better quality cameras, it's almost identical. It's probably that the camera was so crappy before that you didn't notice it. And the other thing Liana found, and I don't know if you've seen this, but the screen is so much better on the iPhone 5 that your pictures look better even if the actual graphic files are not better.
That I do notice. The pictures are beautiful. Really, really beautiful pictures. And you can taking pictures, if you enjoy taking photography, taking it with the iPhone 5 is a beautiful experience. I'm just now going to take a photo of Omnom because...
Sock Rolled in the chat room is saying purple fringing has
good.
been a problem for photographers since the 1880s. And that's absolutely true. And you can reproduce that with high-end cameras as well.
Oh, Omnom looks absolutely fabulous.
Yes.
So you can't really complain. The photography, which will be a little bit difficult to see, but it's beautiful. And Rene, what about panorama?
Panoramas are, someone mentioned taking vertical panoramas of buildings, and that's actually really cool. You start at the bottom. Instead of going horizontally, you go all the way up. The panoramas are really, really nice. I like them a lot more than the kind of programs previously where you had to stitch together multiple photos.
Rene, is there a max to panorama? Can I keep on going around?
Yes, 280 degrees and 23 megapixels.
What's up with the not being able to be 360?
I don't know. It might be just a memory size issue, but those are huge. Those are gigantically huge images, 23 megapixels.
Because that would be so cool to be able to create a GIF after.
or a movie file.
Yeah, that would be so cute.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's programs that can do that.
If you wanted to do that, you would just use the camera.
The other thing that's interesting is that the iPhone 5, previously new iPhones always had significant advantages. Like the iPhone 3GS had voice control. The 4 had FaceTime. The 4S had Siri. And the 5, I mean, the only thing it can do is take photos while you're doing a video, and that's basically a screenshot. There's no significant advantage to having a 5 other than the hardware, which is kind of refreshing for Apple this time.
How can you say... Rene, that's amazing that you can say not having a significant upgrade.
Well, because you remember the complaints, Apple's arbitrarily not allowing us to take video. Apple's not giving us Siri just so we're forced to buy the new phone. You're the only thing to buy this new phone is the hardware advantages. There's nothing really to complain about saying Apple's not giving me XYZ on the 4S just to force me to buy the 5.
I think that was, again, I would not have minded if they had chosen to give us more. Hell, it would have been nice.
Just give me a feature and just don't give it to the 4S.
More features are okay, Apple. Don't think that that's a good idea.
But it does kind of, I mean, Apple seems to have a 2-year refresh. Like they don't really care if the phone is significantly better than the one from last year because most people are on 2-year contracts. But they really seem to target the every 2-year market. It sucks for us because in Canada we're on 3-year contracts. But it seems like the 5 is so much better than the 4S. And the 4S, it's so much better than the 4. And the 4 was so much better than the 3G that it makes a really logical progression for a normal quote-unquote customer.
I wanted to mention one other thing that we did not mention, and that is I was watching the tests from, I forget if I'm going to say the wrong Fix-It place, so I won't mention, but I was watching the drop tests.
Yes.
And this phone can take a licking.
Yes.
They dropped it all the way from over 6 feet, which the other are the little, my poor 4S and 4 really did not do very well on. And this phone can take a whole bunch of hits. One is that it has the aluminum back, plus the fact that it's just made exceptionally well. I was shocked. I was shrieking when I watched the phone drop. It never actually broke until the second time, I think, or third time that they dropped it from over 6 feet. Phenomenal.
And Allie did a drop test. Well, first she smashed it into a statue of a lamb that was dressed like Lady Gaga, and I have no idea what that was about. And then they did a drop test on it, and they did break. And then Allie, ninja that she is, showed you how to replace the screen on the iPhone 5 already. She has already done a full screen replacement for the iPhone 5. Kudos.
Oof. Sounds so scary. Sounds absolutely scary. Was it much harder for her because that for the iPhone 4 and 4S, you have to go through the back to get back to the screen?
She actually likes it. I mean, the nice thing about this design is that I can't say it's more serviceable, but it's more like the 3G and the 3GS where the back is a solid piece, so you can replace. They're going to actually be able to replace the screens in stores. They couldn't do that for the 4S. They would just swap it out for a new phone.
Right.
But this one is you can actually again you can watch your video. It's a process, but you can pull out the screen, change it, close it back up again.
And it's only 2 pentalobe screws on the bottom as well. So of course those
There's
happy
a ton of screws inside though.
Little tiny pentalobe screws on the bottom. So
on the bottom of your Tesseract, there are pentalobes.
Little pentalobes.
So my last question for you, Georgia, is previously when I had an iPhone 4S, the iPhone 5 looked too tall to me. It looked out of proportion. It looked gangly, almost like the awkward teenage years. But now that I've been using it for over a week, I look at a 4S and the 4S looks stunted. My entire perception has changed. It's
completely changed. I do love the design. I still wish that it would be bigger, but I love the design. And I find that the other one looks... and even just feeling it, that heaviness and clunkiness of the phone, this fits so seamlessly into a pocket, into a purse. You don't know, and it doesn't add much weight to it. The difference in the weight is immense. I love it. Love the phone. Don't find it looks stunted. It's beautiful.
So you recommend it?
I would. If you have a 4, I would definitely recommend it. If you have a 4S and you're happy with it, then I can see you waiting.
Yeah, and iOS 6 makes the 4S basically a new device anyway, so you can bide your time.
But it's beautiful. Like,
stunning.
Love phone. It's a stunning phone. My hubby, who has my 4S, always tries to steal the phone. It sits there, and he wasn't that interested into it before, and now it just suddenly disappears.
Nice. So, Georgia, thank you very much for nitpicking along with me this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Where can we find out more about you?
You can find me on Twitter at GeorgiaTIPB, and you can also find me on the website, iMore.com.
And you can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at iMore. You can email us at podcast@imore.com, or just leave a comment on the show when it goes live. For all of our shows, see mobilenations.com/shows. And chat room, you were once again fantastic. I really appreciate you joining us every week. Folks, have a great evening. We will be back. We might do a show this Sunday, but if not, we'll be back next Wednesday.
Awesome.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.